What's up, fans? It's Shockey here from LRMonline.com and the Genreverse Podcast Network. I'm taking over for the Marvel Multiverse Mayhem podcast show now. We got Secret Invasion that just released this past Wednesday. I apologize for not getting this out sooner. Had some technical difficulties with camera, so got a new camera up, and so it looks like we're good to go here. So I'm going to give my thoughts about the first episode that we just saw. Secret Invasion, starring Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, coming back as the role Nick Fury after some time off. And so we get kind of a new show, new style that has been different from the other Marvel shows that have been released on Disney Plus. I will admit, I only saw the first episode of She-Hulk. Wasn't my thing, not horrible or anything. I just wasn't, anything that really interested me. And then also saw that what was the other Hawkeye, saw that Captain America or Winter Soldier and the Falcon, I'm sorry, which later become Captain America, Winter Soldier. He saw those and stuff. So far, Disney Plus shows have been okay for me. Like I said, She-Hulk wasn't the thing on my choice. Miss Marvel, I didn't really get a whole lot to see there. I watched maybe like 15 minutes of it. Just not for me. Nothing negative, nothing crazy about it. Just not my style. Moon Knight with Oscar Isaacs. That was probably my favorite so far. I loved that show. I thought that was a great script, great cast overall. Interesting storyline. I really hadn't read a lot about Moon Knight until prior to that show, and so it was unique and interesting. I love the direction that they went with that. So we got Secret Invasion, Samuel L. Jackson coming back as Nick Fury, like I mentioned beforehand. And it's a unique story. It's a little bit more adult rated. I made the mistake of starting the show, watching it with my daughters, who are 7 and 9, and definitely did not do any research beforehand and had to let them leave the room and stuff. So it's more of an adult show, more for my taste, my style. Miss Marvel was more of their style, so definitely understand that. So if you haven't seen it yet, episode 1, and you got little kids around, maybe not the best time to watch it. Wait till later after they're in bed and stuff. So overall, thought it was a great episode to start off. A little bit of mystery. It's more of an espionage spy show than a traditional Marvel superhero show, which is good. When we get Nick Fury, doesn't really have anything to do with S.H.I.E.L.D. anymore. He's more on, on the outskirts. Now, what we've learned is that after the blip, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched it and you don't want any spoilers, maybe come back and see this a little bit later. But so here's your warning. But for those of you who have watched it or watch it later and not really care about it, we find out that after the blip, Nick Fury is doing a special mission for not really exactly who's in charge of it, whether it's just the United States or a worldwide event and stuff. And he's building a space force, out in out in space, and that's where he's been. And looks like that ultimately after the blip, that the Nick Fury we see on Earth is not Nick Fury; it's a Skrull. Okay. We also learn that the Skrulls are still on Earth and that they are growing, and that the population is now being more interacting with human civilization. We have Talos, who's back, and Gaia is also the daughter of Talos, is back as well. But it seems that over the time here, there's two major stories that we're going to get in this episode. From Captain Marvel, so if you haven't seen Captain Marvel, this show is going to be kind of really out there for you. You're gonna have to do a little bit of research on it, a little bit of reading. But if you saw Captain Marvel, you remember at the end of the movie, the Skrulls are basically going to live in secrecy on Earth until they find a planet that is habitable. And it seems that over time, Talos can't find a new place. Basically, without Captain Marvel, without Nick Fury's help, he's basically left, to do it himself and can't find any place. And so it fractures the scrolls into two, groups, the ones that basically are okay with living on Earth and the ones that want to basically make Earth their homeland and willing to destroy human civilization to take over and make sure that the scrolls, have a home place. It's a radicalist idea. The second story that we get from this is the aftermath of the blip with Nick Fury. So this is not the same Nick Fury that we've seen in the Avengers movies and the previous Marvel movies. Very confident, always, is said in the show, always 3 steps ahead of everyone. This is an older Nick Fury, one who's kind of shaken at the core here. It seems that what happened with him and how he was not prepared for the blip or prepared for Thanos has really shaken Nick's confidence, almost to kind of like the same type of confidence that uh, Tony Stark has, or lack of confidence after the first Avengers movie, and how he's trying to always build something to prevent the next big thing, or what he kind of predicted with Thanos coming and the invasion from there. So this Nick Fury basically is brought back to try to help stop the radicalist scrolls from setting off a catalysmic event. Sorry, had a little uh, hiccup there. And ultimately, the problem that it entails for Fury is that he no longer has Shield. He's on his own. We find out that pretty much he's got Agent Maria Hill with him, back, but there's not that connection that they once had beforehand. And so trying to repair relationships, repair confidence from prior to Thanos and prior to the blip is really the biggest struggle that we see in episode 1. And so leading to the radical group of the Skrulls ultimately succeeding in their first step of a phase of trying to wipe out human civilization so that they can have Earth as to themselves. It's an interesting concept. It's an interesting storyline. It's different from the secret invasions that we got in the comic book series after Civil War. If you read the comic book series, I believe it's, let's see, Civil War, I'm going to say it was like 2004, 2005, if I'm correct. And then Secret Invasion was shortly after that, where the Skrulls basically had been invading, human civilization and taking over, and had, habitating in human interactions for a while now. So this is kind of the same concept here. What we get a little bit different, though, is that instead of taking over as superheroes and super villains and power and so forth, is that it's more or less it's a radical terroristic group planning to set off bombs, planning to set off events so that human civilizations, it looks like, will basically go to war against each other and ultimately lead to some sort of nuclear holocaust, because we learn that the Skrulls are able to live in nuclear radiation fields, and so they've been habitating in Russia and old nuclear facilities with ease. So the kind of what I'm getting from it is that if they can cause a nuclear war to wipe out human civilization, then ultimately we get a planet that the Skrulls can live at. So it's going to be interesting. There's a lot of little points there I want to leave out, so in case you haven't seen the show yet this episode, make sure you pick up on it. Episode 2 comes out on Wednesday. I'm going to make sure, to make that it comes out on that day, and probably give a little bit more detail then. So it gives it a little bit, time for everyone to see episode 1, get into episode 2, also see a little bit more of the storyline, what we haven't played. But so far, my thoughts is this is definitely a better show for the adult Marvel fans. This is, a little bit more intense violence, a little bit more, you got guns, you got explosions, people dying, so definitely not a kid show, but for adults, yes. Okay. So make sure that you check this out Wednesdays on Disney Plus. We'll continue on with the podcast here on a weekly basis. Starting next Wednesday, we'll get the show out, and hope to see you guys, and let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section.